Everybody, welcome to UGA Sports, the rumors versus fact edition of our live show. It's our recruiting show. It is a good 30 minutes to 45 minutes of Georgia recruiting talk. I'm joined by the entire recruiting gang. We got Jed, May, Lance, Trent, everybody here. The whole gang's here, and we couldn't be on the show last week. We had a off week, and it just worked out that we started talking. Hey, can you do the show tonight? I can't do the show tonight. What about you? I can't do it. It's not a good night for me either. So it was just a bad. It was a bad week, and we needed an off week because the class is kind of winnowing down, and we're having to move more to 2025. But there have been a few misses, one get, and some kind of changing targeting for the class of 2024. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the 2025 class. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section there. We will address those on the show. We'll share them on the screen. And if you have questions, drop them in. We will answer questions from the from the vault. We will answer those questions first because those are our paying subscribers, and we got to take care of them. Well, we love them. Even Big Fatty. We love him too. He's always got good questions. So we'll talk about those in a minute. All right, Jed, starting with you. Georgia's had two misses on the recruiting trail since we started, or since our last show. Let's talk about them.
Yeah. The Saturday of the Vanderbilt game, Georgia missed on Aiden Breland, defensive tackle from California. It was Georgia, Oregon, and Miami, I believe, with the finalists. He went to Oregon, and that was one. If you follow the UGA Sports Vault, that's one where it was kind of coming down to the wire till the last couple of days. And, Georgia ended up losing out to Oregon and Dan Lanning, who's putting together a great class. And then the following Saturday, Georgia lost on LJ McCray to Florida. And that was another one. And Trent, you had a good pulse on this one throughout, where it was like, it's Georgia and Florida State, and then Florida's kind of getting in there. And it was really those three for a while. And then Trent, you posted on Friday night that you had been told that he was going to Florida. That's where he committed to on Saturday afternoon. So it's two big losses, two different positions. Breland's more the 3-tech type. Breland is more the defensive end. 5-tech maybe could stand up a little bit, but both would have been great additions to the defensive line. And now they are heading elsewhere. And in McCray's case, going to a major SEC rival. So. No way to spin it. It's two pretty tough blows on the recruiting trail and on the defensive line front over the past 10 days or so.
Yeah, I think Georgia was hoping for at least one of them because it's one of those things where Georgia's got a nucleus committed on the defensive line. They got the 5-tech, they got a 3-tech, and Jordan Thomas. They got the nose guard. Still recruiting another nose guard, but I think this would kind of been the cherry on top for the defense line class, just to land one of these guys. And I, there's no points for second place, definitely in recruiting, but that Breland, was favoring Georgia back in July, August. The longer it got away from that September visit is the more steam Oregon gained on the trail, and then LJ McCray. I think you were just hoping that Georgia would get an unofficial visit, because he visited in late July, and he had a chance to take an unofficial visit to Florida, an official visit to Florida State. Georgia was still right there. Went and visited him. We're talking to him all throughout this past week, but come Friday night, that I was told that Florida was going to gain this commitment, and they were able to do that on Saturday. And I think in the grand scheme of things, there was a lot of family ties with that one to the University of Florida, and that's what ultimately won this recruitment over.
I'm going to give a little inside baseball stuff here. We have a group chat at UGA Sports. We have like a team chat, and we have a recruiting chat. And, most of these guys do both, Well, hell, I don't think we have anybody that's just one or the other, really. But everybody will pitch in where the work needs to be done. Lance is working on team stuff. Jet's working on team stuff. So does Trent with his snap counts and things. And we were hearing the whole Georgia FSU thing. And then Trent's like, I'm here in Florida. I'm like, where the hell is this coming from? And then Friday night, before it all happens, he's like, I'm telling you all, it's Florida. We're like, okay. And I actually reached out to somebody on the UGA staff. I'm like, hey, I heard it's Florida. He's like, yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. And he said they're writing a big check down there. And not to say that he was bought. It's just, there's NIL as a consideration as well. Those things are it's a lot less certainty in the recruiting game, pro and con. It kind of goes both ways. So what you thought was a sure thing one week or a couple months ago, and you can't even follow the visits anymore. It used to be, we watch a kid take 5-10 visits somewhere, and you're like, oh, he's definitely going there. Well, that's what you think until he goes somewhere else. Speaking of winning and losing, go ahead.
The 18 visits KJ took. So.
Yeah, exactly. 5 years ago, everybody who's watching this, Brian Jackson, I know Brian Wilkerson would know this, Darren Franklin, that the kid takes 18 visits. Hell, he's on staff. He's got all the gear, he's come to watch every practice. That's a kid Georgia's getting, but things change. So, but speaking of things changing, Lance, Georgia picked up a recruitment. They flipped somebody.
Mm-hmm. From LSU, Andre Evans, Rivals 250, 4-star cornerback out of Christ Presbyterian Academy in Nashville. And, I think it's kind of funny. Jed was in Nashville, covering the Vanderbilt game. And next thing,
didn't go see him, slacker.
Next thing we know, well, he was seeing another potential flip commit too, actually at cornerback as well. But, we get the news after that, Evans is going to be committing. And, I think that's a positive pickup. Obviously it's not, a defensive lineman. Some people are kind of, a little ticked about and say, this class of defensive lineman might be lacking, at least in the 24 class for Georgia. But I mean, still it's a positive flip. Kirby recruits DBs really, really well. Fran Brown, this was something that, he never gave up on. And, I know that, I was told that, Evans, stayed in contact with Brown and maybe not on a daily basis, but on a weekly basis. And, his hard work paid off. It's a pretty good pickup for Georgia, I would say.
Yeah. What do we know about Andre Evans, guys?
So Georgia offered him after a camp workout this summer. And we all know or have seen how important those camp offers can be. Dylan Bell, Trent, I think, was a camp offer. Cole Spear was a camp offer. Georgia gets these in-person evaluations on these kids, and it plays both positive and negative. Whatever guys this past summer who, camped in Athens and things kind of, tailed off after that. But as far as Andre Evans, he got offered and he gave the typical response, I'm super excited, whatever. And then like 10 days later, he commits to LSU. And it's like, much ado about nothing, I guess. And then, to kind of give a backstory on him, we kind of heard some smoke about him. I want to say last Tuesday or whenever it was. And I had reached out to him earlier in the day saying, hey, is Georgia still in contact? And he said, yeah, they want me as a corner. And I said, okay, well, are you going to be getting to campus soon by any chance? Are you trying to get up for a game? And he said, yeah, I flipped last night and I'm going to try to get back to campus soon. I was like, oh, okay then. So like Lance said, this is one where you don't burn bridges. You keep in touch with these kids, and it paid off. Now he's 6'1", was it say 181 pounds. So sounds like a corner. I mean, a lot of the questions in the aftermath, I was like, well, what is Kirby getting a corner for? We need safeties. I think, and Trent, you've alluded to this on the board too, Kirby is kind of a get these guys on campus and we'll figure it out later. You've got some guys like Ellis Robinson is a corner. He is a corner, will be a corner. But a guy like Andre Evans, maybe a guy like DeMello Jones, who's committed, is more of we'll get a guy on campus and we'll see how it goes, especially if these guys early enroll and you can get to go through spring practice. So, but like Lance says, he's a very talented guy. I didn't realize he was in the top 250 of my rankings. So I guess when I get down,
so you ranked him high. I didn't even know it.
Yeah,
I'm just kind of throwing stuff at the wall at that point. But no, he's a very good player. He's got good size, which Kirby obviously loves to go for, and those guys on the outside, and a big pickup at a position of need, at least as far as the secondary goes, with KJ Bolden miss, Peyton Woodyard miss. Jalen Hayward was ushered out of the class. So Georgia needed to add a DB, and they got one.
Well, remember, because I was looking up something today on Javon Bullard. what do we have him classified as? Cornerback.
Yeah.
Came in and played nickel. Now he's one of the top safeties in the nation. And I don't want to put words in Kirby's mouth, and I don't want to guess on his philosophy, but in my gut feeling is it is harder to find a lockdown corner, a man corner, a corner who can play on an island the way Kirby's defenses are designed, the way they run it a lot, than it is to find a safety. And that's not to say, I mean, safety is very important. Nickels are important. Everyone's just very, very important. But, if you can find a Tyson Campbell and Eric Stokes, like Kamari Lassiter, safety is good. But, I mean, just the way Kirby's scheme is, I think there's more impetus to sign the elitist cornerbacks than it is the best safeties. And it's almost like how many guys does Georgia take that are offensive tackles in high school that we know are going to move into guard? So,
yeah, I think it's important that that no matter what they're classified as, you better be able to cover. In this game, I don't. The days of the hard hitting safety coming down, and I think Lewis Seen has really been maybe Richard LeCount been the guys that are guys that didn't really fit the scheme that Georgia was running, but they were too good to miss to skip on. But I think that those type of days of having those type of players in your system are just over with, just for the fact that unless they're a can't miss prospect, because there's so much covering going on in Kirby's defense, whether it's star safety. You see how many times safeties get manned up on go man to man against a slot receiver. And you saw it a bunch. I remember Lewis Seen going 1-on-1 in the national championship with Alabama slot receiver a couple years ago. So it's you better be able to cover, and that the way you cover that on the recruiting trail is you get as many cornerbacks that can cover as possible, and let the chips fall where they lay when they get on campus.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. I mean, look at what they do with their nickel guys. That you got three different positions that they will put in there. They'll put a safety in there sometimes, a guy that's been recruited safety, they put cornerbacks in there, and sometimes an outside linebacker. So it's they're looking for the best athletes, and Andre Evans is pretty highly renowned. I mean, Jed didn't even realize that he had ranked him that high, so a good pickup for them. Okay, so 2 misses, 1 gain over the last 2 weeks. Who's left?
Well, defensive back, Lance kind of alluded to it. Marcellus Barnes is a guy, he's committed to Virginia Tech, and he's another guy. He came to campus, Georgia offered him, it was in the spring, and he committed to Virginia Tech and kind of fell off the radar. But he told me Georgia has been in contact, but has always been very respectful of his commitments. And hey, Virginia Tech's a great school, but we also still want you. So he showed up for the Kentucky game. Georgia seems to have made a serious move. I think I like where Georgia's at for Barnes. He told me he might be back in Athens for the Ole Miss game. He's a really good player. He's another guy who plays corner at the Macaulay School in Chattanooga, but Lance, he told you could slide over to safety if needed. So he's a really good player. I think Georgia's in a good spot for him. He did tell me any kind of decision wouldn't come until after their season, after the playoffs and everything. So nothing imminent, but I like where Georgia is for him. Defensive line, there's a lot of JUCO guys out there. Brian Taylor is one who's kind of we've got him listed at 6'6", 270. So that might be a little bit more of that 5 tech, like a LJ McCray. There is a guy named Jerome Simmons who is, let's see, what do we have him listed at? 6'5", 320. So that might be your maybe 3 tech type, like an Aiden Breland, a bigger version of Aiden Breland, but a bigger interior guy. And then Trent, you kind of dug up the news on Friday. Georgia outside linebackers coach Jadera Uzo-Deribe made a trip to Missouri to see Williams Nwaneri, and that's one everyone remembers. Georgia was right in it, and then he ends up choosing Missouri there in the last week. That's one to watch. I mean, it's. I know we have a vault question about Dylan Stewart, who's another kind of 5 tech type. I just think Nwaneri is the one they're going at, trying to flip and trying to keep hammer that long-term development pitch and come to Georgia, go first round, be like Trayvon Walker. be like Michael Williams could be a potential first-round pick down the line. So that's one to watch. I think they need to get him back on campus for a game. Obviously, there's 2 home games in Athens left. So it'll be interesting to see if he shows up. But, yeah, that's one, Trent, when you put that out on Friday, that, because, a lot of the coaches went to see commits. There wasn't a ton of guys going to see targets because there aren't a lot of 2024 targets left. But that was one that definitely raised some eyebrows on Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it made me think that Georgia had gotten the news that they wasn't going to get McCray, and now they're going to go full onslaught after Williams-Nwaneri, and that was the opportunity to get, I don't think they ever lost contact. I think contact has remained throughout, but that was a chance to get in front of his face. Once again, I guess it was unfortunate that Missouri head coach Drinkwitz or whatever landed a helicopter at the field that day, but still, every opportunity to get in front of the family, get in front of the kid, and not saying Georgia has a great shot at that, but it's just the opportunity to keep that relationship building and see what happens at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'd like to add, maybe Cam. I think Ronnie and I and Jed kind of talked about this today at media availability, but Cam Michael, he's another one of those guys. I know, it sucks to lose a guy, from Colquitt County in your own state that's committed for a while. But, Michael's playing states where he's listed as a cornerback, but he's an athlete. But Trent, didn't you mention something on the board? Maybe it's, Georgia telling him that he could play, wherever he wanted. He could be a receiver that they could also be going after.
From what I was told, they were told that he's been recruited as a cornerback this entire time. Now it's a situation where, hey, you come on campus as an athlete, we'll figure it out when you get here. Wow. And I think that's kind of where they've put it, instead of saying, oh, you can come here and play receiver, because I think that's not the honest truth. But you get here and we'll find the best spot for you. Kind of like they did with McCall Hardman. They started him off as cornerback and then they moved him over to wide receiver. Just see where you're more comfortable at, see where you're best fit of this team. So, that opens up the possibility of doing what he wants to do, which is play wide receiver. But I don't think Georgia's just fully on to him as a wide receiver. It's just an athlete.
Yeah, and he's a kid that's been to Georgia a lot over the past. Just looking at his rivals page visits. I don't know if he's made a visit since June of 2022. He probably has, but. He's another one of those kids that could fill, one of those last couple spots that are left.
Yeah, for sure. And when you talk about receivers, there's another guy that Georgia's kind of made a move for, Terrell Anderson from North Carolina, committed to NC State, attends, I believe, Grimsley High School, which is where Jamal Jarrett went. And he came to Athens for, I believe, the Kentucky game.
Yeah, it was in Kentucky.
And, all the reports out of that, it seemed like Georgia has, and we kind of said going into the season, it's going to be interesting to see who shows up on campus, who kind of shoots up toward the top of the board. It seems like Terrell Anderson is at least among a select group who has kind of moved up the board there. And you see there he's 6'3", 184 pounds. I mean, good receiver size. And, Georgia's got a history of flipping NC State commits with they got Kyron Jones right there at the very end last year. So that's one to watch for sure at receiver. There's always, and I know we have all questions about, Mike Matthews is out there. I personally just don't see it with Mike Matthews. Not impossible, I guess. I know there was kind of some smoke that he may end up visiting. I can't remember which game that was that he might get to. Didn't happen. Personally, I don't see it. I mean, crazier things have happened, but I don't see it with Mike Matthews. And but yeah, there's guys out there they can look to flip. There's Draylon Miller is a guy who Georgia tried to get in with, decommitted from I believe Texas A&M maybe. So there's all kind of guys out there. There's still 2 months till signing day, and it's going to be these last 2 home games are going to be very interesting because obviously it's your last shot to get somebody on campus, at least for a game day before signing day. So it's going to be interesting to see if any big names kind of pop up just out of nowhere in Athens.
I think that the important thing here is, and the reason why I was talking about Michael is Georgia's going after a specific type of receiver. And I think Terrell Anderson fits that mold of being that outside receiver that Georgia's going after. And then, Georgia's got a lot of guys that are 5'11", 6 foot, speedsters, and I think Georgia's trying to get that X factor on the outside that can go up and jump ball in the end zone and win those one-on-ones. So I think it's a specific type receiver that they want to land in this class. If they can't, they'll try to go to the portal. But I think Anderson definitely fits that mold, and we'll see what happens there. And I think Georgia will continue to recruit this position hard and evaluate that position, because I do think they'll bring in at least one more.
I believe Anderson will be coming back the Mizzou game. If you scroll down on his Rivals page, it says, looking at the last few days, it says November 3rd. So that's a game, yeah.
So but that does have a question about Big Fatty's question about who could be visiting. Let's hop onto that real quick. Big Fatty 94 says, who could y'all envision being some recruits that could end up at a visit at UGA for Mizzou or Ole Miss that may open some eyes? I think you just mentioned Terrell. That could open some eyes.
I can envision a lot of things, man. I got a wild imagination, but I've got a few early visitors down here for the Missouri game. It was Monty Croma, who is just an absolute stud at running back for Lee County. He'll be back for the Missouri game. Cortez Smith, a 25 offensive lineman who Georgia's in really good shape with. Georgia likes him as a center, and he's been to Athens. That dude's always in Athens. I mean, he's been to Athens probably close to double-digit times, I would guess, and he's a junior. So Georgia's in a good spot with him. We mentioned Terrell Anderson. Zayden Walker is actually going to be at the Florida game this weekend and be back in Athens for the Missouri game. Third.
Who's giving him the ticket to the game? Georgia, Florida.
Well, that's a good question, but I don't know. He made it seem like it was. I don't know. I don't think Florida is super up there in his recruitment. I could be wrong. I guess I don't know.
Could be the Michigan spy.
You what, Trent?
Could be the Michigan spy.
True. Yeah, he could be the Michigan spy. He's freed up. Ole Miss. We've got Nasir Johnson, the Florida commit defensive lineman. Another guy Georgia's going after. We didn't mention him earlier, but he's more of that 3-tech mold as well. Georgia is really pushing hard for him. He'll be there. I think Justice Terry is going to be there for Ole Miss. And then Brian Taylor, who I mentioned earlier as a JUCO guy, is planning to be there, or was looking at, last time I talked to him, was looking at the Ole Miss game to get to town. So, but definitely, I mean, those games are going to be, and the Missouri game is definitely going to be because they're off. That's two potentially top 25 matchups. Missouri's at 3:30. Ole Miss will probably be 3:30 or a night game. So two marquee matchups, two marquee time slots, I guess. So those are going to be huge weekends. I'm guessing for sure.
If you're trying to envision somebody coming in, I mean, nothing's confirmed on our end whatsoever. But it would not surprise me if a guy like Williams Nwaneri popped up at the Georgia Missouri game.
He's committed to Missouri. I'm just watching my team.
Well, he's close friends with Dylan Raiola. He's close with that family, and that would be something that would not surprise me. Now, with Georgia going out there and visiting him saying, "Well, I'm going to see some friends," and he's got family in Atlanta, and so it would not surprise me to see him pop up there. But that's nowhere near confirmed. But if we're just looking at guys that could pop up.
Yeah, I mean, I give some of the names. I can see KJ Bolden coming back for those. You can see Juju Lewis coming back, popping up for that. I mean, those are fun matchups that you're going to get a lot of players who may not have any real interest, but they want to go see the biggest game of the week. So,
I mean, will Lincoln Riley even be there when Juju's there? So,
yeah. I think another name too in the class of 2025 is Elijah Melendez, inside linebacker from OCL High School in Kissimmee, Florida. He just released a top 10 last week, and Georgia made the cut. He was supposed to be at a game earlier this year. He ended up not being able to come, I think, due to some family reasons, he told me. But he was telling me that he was going to try to make it back for one of the final 2 home games this year.
Definitely see that. From CBuck11, or I guess that's how you say it. Thanks, CBuck, for popping in a question. How do you feel the defensive line situation is playing out? Who are some guys you think UGA has a good chance of getting? Pretty
yeah, I mean, you've hit on it a little, but I think you got to watch Nasir Johnson because he was at I forget what he was. He's been at a game. He was at the Kentucky game, according to my list here. So And again, it's interesting because the math would tell you, okay, Georgia misses on Aiden Breland, you turn up the heat on Nasir Johnson. I've heard from people that Georgia's pushing pretty hard for Nasir Johnson even before the Breland thing went down. So he's a guy that Georgia wants. He's from Dublin, an in-state kid. Obviously, I know he's got family members who are big Georgia fans. So that's one to watch. And again, it's a position of need. It becomes that much more important to get that guy, because if you get him, all of a sudden, okay, you've got a, it's not a 1-for-1 swap, but a Breland replacement. And then if you can add, a Williams Winery or a Brian Taylor, someone to fill that 5-tech spot, then all of a sudden you're feeling a little bit better about that defensive line class. So Nasir Johnson definitely is one I would watch, and Mekhi Boyro as well. We haven't really talked a ton about him. Georgia momentum, I think, isn't as hot maybe as it once was, but he's still a guy Georgia wants. That interior nose tackle, maybe 3-tech spot. He's going to be at the Georgia-Florida game on Saturday. Once was committed to Florida. So those two guys, the JUCO guys, and then anyone else who might pop up, either a late rising JUCO guy or just somebody who pops up on campus down the stretch.
All right. Next question from What's Up Dog. There's been some speculation recently that Georgia has a legitimate chance of flipping Williams Winery to our Dogs. Can you verify that is the case? And if it is in fact the case, do you like Georgia's chances? So is there a chance and a legitimate chance? And if so, likelihood?
Yeah, I mean, Trent, I think it depends on your definition of legitimate, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say he's flipping, but there's been rumors all around that he's still looking, and I think with Georgia, he himself said that Georgia finished second in the race when he was with Missouri. Oklahoma finished behind Georgia. I think, but I think Georgia and Oklahoma are the two schools that he's still legitimately looking at. I'm not going to say it's a great chance, but there is still an opportunity. I think you would have to get him back on campus in some sort, whether if it's Missouri with him watching Missouri, I think you have to get him back on campus. But I do think there is there's an opportunity. There's not a big chance, I would say, because that Missouri money runs a long ways, but NIL money. But I will say there is an opportunity, and he is listening. I will say that.
That's all you can hope for, really.
Yeah.
All right. Realistic UGA fan 11 says, we know y'all have some nuggets on some names we are working on flipping, and we're going to have success behind the scenes. Who are those names? Well, that's not like we're holding back. You guys have mentioned just about everybody that could possibly flip.
Yeah, I mean,
Arch Manning.
That's exactly what I thought.
We're getting everybody. Here comes Brees.
Training days sometimes. Future soon-to-be Texas starting quarterback Arch Manning. But I think you look at Nasir Johnson. I think Georgia has a good shot with him. Terrell Anderson, Georgia has a good shot with, I would say. Marcellus Barnes, who I mentioned earlier. Those three guys stick out right now. But again, I mean, Winery is listening. If another receiver, maybe other than Anderson, pops up, that there's a lot of possibilities. And again, I think with how big these visit games are going to be, if anyone pops up at those games, then it could be an interesting chance or interesting look at who might really be listening, who might show up. But yeah, I would say Johnson, Barnes, and Anderson, I would say, are the three that I guess are most likely right now, is how I would put it.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a lot of people still listening.
Yes.
with the KJ Boldens, and Georgia's been in contact with Xavier Filame, or whatever his name is, from the Florida safety commit. So, there's still things. There's still going to be in-home visits with a lot of these guys when it comes December. Mm-hmm. But I would say Jed hit the nail on the head with the most realistic.
Man, you didn't say KJ Bolden immediately. You didn't say Sammy Brown. Y'all are not going to make this show worth a damn.
Sammy Brown is not flipping in Georgia. So that's just not, we're not even going to mention it. I mean, he made that decision.
Please give me KJ Bolden. I mean, give me a soundbite we can use for social. I mean, Jesus, I need something.
We gave you Arch Manning. That's all you get.
Okay, there we go. when we're getting breezy too. The boy race to 45 says it feels like Kirby always wins one big recruitment at the end of the cycle near early signing day. And this year's best options seem to be KJ Bolden, Mike Matthews, and Williams. Wondering, what are the odds we flip at least one of them?
I mean, none of them are more than.
I mean,
15%. I mean, it's.
I was gonna say 20.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that none of them are that great of a chance. I mean, I think.
If you're looking at those, I would say KJ Bolden is probably the most realistic, just because his relationship with Kirby and his relationship with some of the commits. But I wouldn't say any of them are something that we have stories already wrote on. We might have stories wrote on before they committed the first time, but not stories now.
I mean, I think if you want a glimmer of hope with the Winery thing, I think, when he went to Missouri, there was a lot of, okay, there's the NIL and there's the, he can start getting it in high school and whatever. If you can just keep chipping away and just keep hammering that, again, the long-term development, to come get developed, all that kind of stuff, which was the heart of the pitch to begin with. You never know. Maybe it gets through at some point. I know there were family members who kind of liked that pitch originally. So maybe you get through. I don't know. That's how I think that's your road to success there. If you get them back on campus, like in the recruiting lounge, I know they've got a electronic ticker thing around the top that's those guys like career earnings, rookie contracts, that kind of stuff. So they might just have Trayvon Walker's like going on a loop for 2 hours before the game, just trying to hammer that home. So that's your road to success, I guess, with Winery. But again, none of them are super.
The bright side, I would say, is all three of these prospects that are mentioned have one family member that would like them to go to Georgia. Right. I think that is one positive aspect. I wouldn't say the same with Oklahoma being the case. I'm talking about a parent of the three guys. So I think that's where it leaves the door open. And I think communication will continue to take place, and I think all three of them will get in-home visits before all said and done, and we'll see where it falls.
Yeah, my take on some of those is they've got really good deals, and Georgia came in, like I said, very tight. They have family members that want them to do it, but Georgia is not going to go match some of the deals these guys have. I'm not saying that's the number one reason they picked the schools they did. Those were obviously, in their mix before some of that stuff came out. But Georgia's fighting an uphill battle on at least two of those. So, which does bring up something near and dear to my heart. You notice behind me, I have a bottle of the Hunker vodka. That is something new from ASW Distillery. That is in conjunction with the Classic City Collective. In other words, if you go out and buy a Hunker vodka, some of the proceeds of that go to the Classic City Collective. They don't go to a specific player. They're not going to have any players who are pitching vodka or beer or anything like that. But if you go to a tailgate and you buy Tito's gave $20 million to the University of Texas for their facility upgrades. So Tito's big sponsors of the University of Texas. So if you're buying Tito's, you're helping out the University of Texas. If you buy Hunker, you're helping out the University of Georgia. My point is, when you help out UGA, they have more NIL money to take care of the guys they want to come back, who might go off to the NFL, like, a Cedric Van Pran or guys like that, who stick around an extra year, a Nolan Smith, and they go, hey, glad you came back. We've got this great opportunity for you. There are these companies that want you to be the face of their brand. Cut this commercial. Here's a check. Thanks for staying. And it works out great. They're not going all in on a high school kid as much as some of these other schools who haven't won 2 titles back to back. But the more they have in their war chest, the more they can go toe-to-toe with some of these other schools for the high school kids and take care of their proven starters. So, again, Georgia, what are the chances? Until they're able to go toe-to-toe on the NIL front, you don't know how many of these kids can flip. And that's why they have to sell, earnings and signing bonuses and stuff like that, because they're not doing it on the front end. So, and one way you can help is get drunk on Hunger Vodka instead of Tito's. So, just going to mention that up front. Shane UGA says, who's left on Georgia's board? Is there any smoke with Georgia getting Mike Matthews? You mentioned we already did who was left on the board, and but what about the Mike Matthews deal?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't see it. I mean, again, it was probably the South Carolina game just because that was the early season marquee matchup. But he was kind of we heard during the week that he might be showing up, and we never really got it confirmed one way or another. And then game day came and went, and he wasn't there. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's still listening. And his mom, as has been covered, went to Georgia, I think, for grad school. So she obviously loves Georgia. But I don't know, man. I'm not seeing it with Mike Matthews. I could be totally wrong. He gets on campus from these last two games, and Georgia, rolls some momentum up and flips him at the end. Then I'm more of an idiot than I already am. But I just think it's more likely Georgia ends up getting a Terrell Anderson more so than getting Mike Matthews. Personally,
I think there's going to be a lot of wide receiver eyes on the Georgia offense over the next 3 games because no Brock Bowers.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of the negative pitch now is Georgia's offense only throws to Brock Bowers. You're going to have to win at the wide receiver. Not to say Oscar Depp's not going to come in and have, 5 catches a game, but I'm saying you're going to have to win at the wide receiver position. I think there's a lot of odds are going to be on wide receiver because everybody is under the assumption that Brock Bowers was Georgia's offense. Well, Brock Bowers is not getting 550 total yards per game. I mean, that's just ludicrous to even think about. But I think the negative pitch is Georgia only throws to Brock Bowers. So no Brock Bowers, Florida, Ole Miss, Missouri. You have an opportunity to really, highlight those wide receivers because more so now without Brock being there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I have to say to that, when I was talking to the Carnell Warren, the 26 wide receiver, I straight up asked him, I was like, do you think that, the Bulldogs not throwing the ball, their receivers is fake? And he said, in quote, if I had to say, I think it's actually a pretty fake statement. I watched it with my own eyes. They threw the ball around pretty well that night, and talking about that Kentucky night. He said the passing game really looked smooth, and he liked that Georgia spread the ball around to, ever have, I think, maybe a dozen pass catchers against Kentucky. So, I think that, at least on some level, these recruits know that statement that Georgia doesn't throw the ball that Georgia throws the ball just to his tight ends is pretty fake.
Yeah, I talked to Travis Smith Jr. From Westlake this past Friday, and Dell McGee was at that Westlake Carrollton game. So was Brian McClendon, and he's like, "Look, Coach McClendon, I got 2 Georgia coaches here to see me. They tell me I'm a priority. They were also there to see Juan Gaston, the big offensive lineman for 2025, and." Both of them were very impressive. There are 2 Georgia coaches, one on either side of the field, watching them. And but I did ask Travis about that. I'm like, what's the idea that Georgia's RBU and they don't throw the ball enough? He goes, no, they throw it fine. And the fact that they're here to see me, that lets me know that I'm a priority. It means a lot to me. So the negative recruiting won't always get through.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Last question from Space Pope 3: is Georgia still recruiting Dylan Stewart with South Carolina looking rough?
That's a name. It's like from Star Wars. That's a name I've not heard in a long time. I'm sure they kept touch, but honestly, Georgia fell out of that one for, a couple months before he committed to South Carolina. I don't really see him getting back in it. I think if we're looking at a 5-tech flip target, again, it's Williams Winery, it's Brian Taylor, the JUCO kid, it's someone else who might pop up, but I don't think Dylan Stewart is really on the radar though. But again, if he shows up on campus, then all bets are off. But I don't think he's really kind of high on the board right now.
All right. Well, I think that's got most of them answered there. Looking through the comments there, I don't think there's any that we missed or anything that we didn't answer. All right, so where are you guys going? Who are you going to go see next?
Well,
I know you guys
I'm
are on the road all
wedding
the time.
because I got friends who plan interesting weddings. But next weekend I'm going to Dublin, Swainsboro. That's Nasir Johnson versus DeMello Jones. Who DeMello, last time I saw him, had one of the best high school games I've ever seen. He just absolutely dominated. So that'll be a good game. Lance, I think you're going to see Cam Michael Friday, I believe,
Yes.
right?
Statesboro is playing in Waycross, so I'm going to go see them two play. And then I'm going to try to stop, since I'm staying in Amelia Island for Georgia, Florida, going to try to get in contact with Camden County coach and go visit Elias Williams and just go, catch up with him. And I know he's been a Georgia commit in the 25 class as a tight end for a while. So just, kind of go see him. I know he's been to a game this year. So just kind of catch up, see how his junior season's going in his first year at Camden County, because he was at Charlton County, home of the Bailey brothers the last few years. So
Trent, you guys going to do something for a change?
Jed hadn't told me, so I think I'm going to crash a wedding with Jed.
Deal. That worked. Wedding in New Orleans. It's going to be a good time.
Oh, don't take Patrick with you.
No, Patrick's not invited.
no comment.
Man, poor Patrick catches shrapnel. And I was the one I couldn't stand. So I won't throw stones. I won't throw stones at our boy Pat. Marvin's husband wants to know what happened to Darius Smith. We had a lot of team questions. We're going to kind of hold those for our UGA Sports Live show. So we'll check out over there. But we'll have updates on that. And a lot of the questions that were asked by DeFranklin 31, he has a bunch of good questions about, Brock Bowers returning and injury reports and stuff like that. So we appreciate the questions from DeFranklin 31, but we'll try to answer those on the UGA Sports Live show. Yeah, so that'd be a good one there. That's it. So again, you guys will be on the road. It's the Georgia Florida weekend. Try to see some kids, but hopefully by next week we can have some new updates for the folks at UGA Sports. So be sure to always check the front page of UGAsports.com. That's where all the news is. And then go by the vault. We have two message boards at UGAsports.com. There's the Dog Vent, where we talk Georgia football, and then there's the vault, where we talk Georgia recruiting. And the reason they were split years and years ago was there were so many recruiting questions, people couldn't find all the football talk. So we split them into two boards. I know most sites aren't big enough to do that, but ours is pretty large. And so if you want to talk just recruiting, check out the vault. If you want to talk Georgia football or, other football, you want to make fun of other teams and go talk all sorts of college football stuff, that's on the Dog Vent at UGAsports.com. So check it out when you get a chance. Anyway, for Jed, Trent, and Lance, my name is Roddy. We will see you next week. Take care.